So Camry was my student in two settings. So I first met him when he was in ninth grade in what was a specialized school that I was the only teacher for. That the school no longer exists, but basically it was a transition school. That's exactly what it was called. It was connected to the alternative school. So any student who was involved in the court system or had did time in a juvenile facility, they would have to come to my classroom for sort of like an assessment period, get caught up on things, get back into the flow of attending school. And then we'd also have to determine what is the best setting for them after they left. So Camry spent two marking periods with just me every single day for 7 hours. And maybe a few other students. So we really had like built a tight relationship early on because our birthdays were like a week apart. So we used to always say things like Team Aries. And, I pushed him really hard and challenged him. So we had like a great relationship because we were together for so many hours in a small space. And then eventually, once I moved to another building, still within the alternatives umbrella, he ended up back in my classroom again. And this time, I think he was in maybe 10th grade. So I caught him maybe like a year and a half later in another day setting. And same thing, we just picked up right where we left off. We had to adjust to him going from calling me by my first name and calling me Miss Toya to calling me Miss Bosworth. So that was an adjustment. But we also had a great relationship. And then Camry did get into some trouble later on. And so he would be like sort of like in and out of the school, but he would still come. He would always come take his state test and pass them and do well. But there was just a lot going on in his community and in his environment that presented a lot of challenge for him that we couldn't necessarily really help him with when he wasn't in school. So even after he left school, came back, and like I said, did his testing, did everything, and moved on, we still stayed in contact with each other. So not just myself, but also Sharonda Hector, who was doing the award with me. She and I worked directly across in our classrooms from each other for years. And then so even when she moved on to other school settings, we just stayed in contact with our kids, and not just Camry, but pretty much any of them, because all of the settings are so small. So, text messages. There was one point, even at time where he was in jail, he actually had, somebody get my number so that he could call me and just touch base with me and stay in contact. So we always stayed in contact with each other over the years via social media, text messages, etc.